Good afternoon. We are continuing on with our Chapter 11. We've done the flour industry with Charles Pillsbury. We've done the lumber industry with Frederick Weyerhaeuser. Today we are doing the iron mining industry with Henry Oliver. We're going to learn about him, how he started his business, like we saw what Pillsbury did and what Weyerhaeuser did. Let's see what Henry Oliver does.
Henry Oliver and the iron mining industry. Iron mining is an expensive business that requires investments made by people willing to take tremendous financial risks. Some of the first people to put their money into the state's iron mining industry were Minnesotans who hoped to become rich. Many, though, were wealthy industrialists from eastern states. Of all the out-of-state businessmen who invested in Minnesota's iron mines, Henry W. Oliver may have been the most influential. Oliver owned a steel manufacturing company in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He wanted to find a reliable source of iron ore because iron was needed to produce steel. In 1892, he found that source in northern Minnesota. He started investing in a few of the small iron mining companies that had begun operating on what was known as the Mesabi Range. Mesabi comes from an Ojibwe word meaning giant. Within a few years, the Oliver Mining Company was the biggest and most successful iron mining business in Minnesota.
So let's look at this. How many iron ranges are there in northern Minnesota? When we look at that map. Aiden? Question was, how many? What do you think, Eleanor? What do you think, Harper? How did you get 3, Harper? They're labeled. The Vermilion Range is this section right here. The Mesabi Range is this section here. And the Cuyuna Range is this section here. So we have 3 iron ore ranges in northern Minnesota. Which one's the biggest one? The Mesabi. What does Mesabi mean?
Giant.
Addie?
Giant.
Giant. So look at how big that Mesabi range is in comparison to the Cuyuna, in comparison to the Vermilion. It is way bigger. There are 3 iron ranges in Minnesota. It's important to know that. I've always heard of the Mesabi Range up north. I didn't realize we had 3. I didn't realize we had 2 smaller ones. Now I know after teaching this class, oh, there are actually 3 iron ranges. Important to know, Vermilion and Cuyuna are also iron ranges. They're just a lot smaller than the Mesabi. Mesabi means giant, so of course it would make sense that that is the biggest iron range up north.
Oliver was rich, but he wasn't rich enough to pay for a big mining operation all by himself. He raised much of the money he needed by making business deals with 2 of the wealthiest men in the world. Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller were based in the northeastern United States. Carnegie had made his fortune in the steel manufacturing business. Rockefeller had made his millions in oil, railroads, and shipping. Both men invested large amounts of money in Minnesota's iron mines.
So when we learned about Weyerhaeuser, what did we learn about him and the lumber industry?
He doesn't care if all the trees get down.
True, he didn't care about cutting down all of the trees, but think about the industry. What did we call Weyerhaeuser in relation to the lumber industry? Remember, James J. Hill was the empire builder because he had so many different industries that he was a part of, right? He did the railroad, but he also did the shipping, and he did the iron range and the coal mine. He had all those different industries. Weyerhaeuser had an empire in the lumber industry. Why did we call it an empire for the lumber industry with Weyerhaeuser? Robbie?
Because he had like everything.
He had all the different parts to the lumber industry. He had the sawmill and said, well, I need logs for that, so I'm gonna own the forests that were cutting down the trees for the log. Well, how am I gonna get those to the sawmill? I'm gonna own the railroads, getting it to the sawmill. So Weyerhaeuser owned all of the parts in the lumber industry. Oliver doesn't own all of the parts himself, but he teams up with two other people to own those two other parts. So who does he team up with? Important to know. Who does Oliver team up with? Robbie?
John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie.
Yeah. How many of us either have been to New York or know a little bit about New York to know about Rockefeller Center? Yeah, some of us have heard of that. Rockefeller Center, Rockefeller Plaza. Okay. How about Carnegie Hall, where the big concerts are played? Yeah. And they have, at Carnegie Hall, they also have some big award ceremony, I forget which one. They're named after Carnegie and Rockefeller that Oliver teamed up with. They named them after these big, huge industrialists because they had tons of money. They all got rich together. The biggest one was through the iron industry. So each of these men owned a part of the industry. Here in Minnesota, we have the Iron Range. Oliver is the big person connected with the iron industry for Minnesota history because he owns the mines. So that means Carnegie and Rockefeller are going to own the other pieces to it. Okay? Weyerhaeuser owned all of the pieces himself. These guys teamed up together so they each owned a different section.
Under an agreement made in 1896, Oliver, Carnegie, and Rockefeller agreed to split up control of the iron mining business in Minnesota. Oliver's company continued to operate the mines that produced the iron ore. Rockefeller's railroads and shipping lines carried the ore away from the mines. Carnegie's factories in northeastern states turned the ore into steel. It was an arrangement that made all three men even richer.
So Weyerhaeuser owned the forests, the railroads, and the sawmills all here in Minnesota. Oliver had the iron mines here in Minnesota. Rockefeller had the railroads that brought all of the iron ore out to the eastern states. Ohio is a big manufacturing state. So I don't know exactly where Carnegie's factories were, but out to the northeast, like Ohio. So Rockefeller's railroads would bring the iron ore out to Carnegie's factories. So the big piece of it for Minnesota is the Iron Range with Oliver. But we need to know that Rockefeller and Carnegie were a part of that iron industry. Now, our blue box is what is iron ore and why is it important? Look at number 6 on your comprehension page. It's the exact same question. What is iron ore and why is it important? Let's listen.
What is iron ore and why is it important? Just like productive farmland, water power, and trees, iron ore is an important natural resource in Minnesota. It can be found in rock and in layers of sediment. Geological forces created deposits of iron ore in different parts of northern Minnesota. On the Vermilion and Cuyuna ranges, layers of rock deep beneath the Earth's surface contained veins of iron ore. There, underground mines were needed to extract the ore from the rock. On the Mesabi Range, the ore lay close to the surface in a soft layer. Mesabi mines were called open pit mines because miners worked from the surface, digging down into the ore. Once the ore was collected, it was shipped off for processing. At this stage, the iron was separated from the unwanted impurities. This pure iron was then used as an ingredient to make steel, a metal prized for its strength and long life. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, Steel was in high demand to build skyscrapers, automobiles, and railroads. Minnesota's iron ore helped the United States become an industrial world power in the 1900s.
So what is iron ore? You can just put the definition, right? Page before has the iron ore definition on it. I think it was the page before, right? Yeah. It has the definition for iron ore. This is what it is. Then why is it important? Because you go up to the Mesabi Iron Range and you take some iron ore, well, what am I gonna do with this? What do they do with the iron ore? Ruby?
They turn it into steel.
Yeah, they take out the parts that they need to make steel. What is steel used for? Let's see.
Concrete buildings.
So think about this time period, late 1800s, early 1900s, our cities are starting to grow. Remember St. Paul, when it first started, was so small, and they had the one-room schoolhouse because there was, not that many families there. It wasn't a big town. Now, Minneapolis is becoming the flower, I forget the actual words, but like the center of flour milling in the world, here in Minnesota, right? So our city is getting bigger as the factories are getting bigger. The city is growing because all these workers are coming in, they need places to live. And we start growing, what kind of buildings are starting to come into our cities? Harper?
Skyscrapers.
Skyscrapers are coming in. How do we get, we can make a house out of wood, right? One story, maybe a two-story house. What do we need to make a skyscraper?
Yeah.
You need those steel beams to make that skyscraper strong, because we don't want it to topple over in a big windstorm. Right? So the steel was super important. What else was becoming popular late 1800s, early 1900s? What was spreading across all of Minnesota? The railroads is spreading across Minnesota. Railroads need steel. Okay, think about what the railroad runs on, steel. What are railroads made out of? Steel. And Adeline said another important thing that was coming about early 1900s.
Automobiles.
Automobiles, right? Henry Ford starts manufacturing these automobiles, making it affordable to get them, making a lot of them, using that assembly line. So there's a lot of cars. Cars are made out of steel. Christina?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is there only one natural resource?
Nope, we talked about two. So you had been listening to the discussion about what our second natural, oh no, we haven't had the discussion yet, that was my last class. You're jumping ahead. Don't jump ahead, okay? We haven't had the discussion yet, we will. I was thinking about the last class, I pointed it out specifically. So we haven't done the circle yet at all. We haven't talked about those three pieces yet. We might know a couple of things to fill in. We've talked about some important people. We kind of already know the most important natural resource. So you could fill in some of that, but we haven't done those sections yet in the book. Did you have a question, Harper? Okay.
Iron mining industry essentials. Most of Minnesota's iron ore country was less than 100 miles away from Lake Superior. This physical feature was an important part of the industry's success. Trains hauled ore from the mines to the lake. From there, large ships carried the ore to steel mills in Pennsylvania and Ohio. Being close to Lake Superior was just part of Minnesota's success in iron mining. Also essential were heavy machinery and people to operate the equipment. Most important of all was the state's large supply of iron ore as a natural resource.
So, Christina, listening to that, did you get an idea of what our second important natural resource is going to be? Well, we'll get to it when we get to the natural resources section. Let's learn about the Merritt family of Duluth real quick.
The Merritt family of Duluth. The Merritt brothers of Duluth were among the first people to take a financial risk on Minnesota's iron ore deposits. The family had already made some profits in the logging industry. They believed they would strike it rich if they could find large deposits of valuable iron ore. Leonidas, Alfred, and the rest of the brothers searched for years for ore deposits in the hills of northeastern Minnesota. After discovering rich iron ore deposits in 1890, they made a small fortune. Within a few years, however, they lost most of the money they had made. John D. Rockefeller eventually took over control of the Merritt's iron mining operations. They sued him for fraud, but in the end received only enough money to pay off their creditors.
So, when you own a business, you have to really know the ins and the outs to how to run a business. The Merritt family made a small fortune when they discovered the iron ore up in the Mesabi Range. They're like, whoa, look at all this money. But they weren't managing things correctly. And all of a sudden Oliver comes in. He's a smart businessman. He knows how to manage everything. He knows how to control things. One thing we've noticed about all these industrialists is they know how to run a successful business. Remember, Pillsbury came in, they're like, oh, he's buying that failing flour mill. He's gonna go under just like everybody else. They don't know what they're doing, but he knew. Oliver knows how to run a successful business, and he ends up taking it all the way from the Merritt family, and they go broke. Right? They end up with just enough money to pay off all of their creditors, and they lost all of their fortune. So they were upset. They try suing Oliver, saying, oh, fraud, he took advantage of us, he's doing bad things. Oliver won because he knew how to manage his business. So if you want that really successful business, a lot goes into it. You have to really understand the business world and how to be successful. Now we're on to our 3 sections. Okay, so now we're going to be filling in those 3 parts: natural resources, people, and jobs, and the machines. Some of them we've already heard about. So you might be able to fill some of these in just by having paid attention to the beginning part of this class. So natural resources, I really hope we can all fill in the first most important one. What would it be, Amala? The iron ore. It's found naturally on the iron ore ranges, right? It's just there in the earth. First big important one to fill in. Then I sit and think about it and go, I'm not really sure. We may have picked up, if we were listening carefully, we may have picked up on another one, but let's listen and see.
Natural resources. Minnesota's state geologist first reported finding iron ore in the northeastern part of the state in 1865. It wasn't until the 1890s, though, that the true magnitude of Minnesota's iron wealth became clear. In 1890, brothers Leonidas and Alfred Merritt discovered that parts of the Mesabi Hills, north of Duluth, were covered with soft grains of iron ore that could be shoveled up like dirt. They had found the ore deposits of what would soon be called the Mesabi Range. As it turned out, the Mesabi, along with the smaller Vermilion and Cuyuna ranges, formed one of the largest masses of high-grade iron ore in the world. It was considered high-grade because the ore contained a high percentage of iron. While it was valuable, it was also expensive to produce.
So that talks about one natural resource. That's the natural resource, iron ore. Okay, so I said there's going to be a second one. Most of these parts of the circles, I said you need at least 3, and there's lots more that you can fill in. This one is the tricky one. There's the iron ore, and there's going to be a second one. So we already heard it once. Now let's listen to the machines. We're going to hear about it again and how it was used. And you're also going to learn about the machines. Wait.
Machines. To be profitable, iron mining required an enormous investment in heavy machinery and transportation. Before the mining companies could make any money, they had to build railroads to haul the iron ore to Lake Superior. There, they had to construct ore-loading docks along the lake shore in Duluth, 2 harbors, and Superior, Wisconsin. They also had to build a fleet of ships to carry the ore across the Great Lakes. As technology improved, the equipment used for mining and transporting ore changed. At first, they used massive steam-powered shovels to dig the ore out of open-pit mines and steam-powered trains to haul the ore to Lake Superior. As technology progressed, electric shovels replaced the steam shovels, and trains with diesel engines replaced steam trains.
So, before we go into the machines part, what is that second natural resource that was really important in the iron industry? Adeline?
Lake Superior.
Lake Superior. How is Lake Superior used in the iron industry? Harper?
To transport iron.
Yeah, they are transporting that iron ore on the big ships. Because remember, it's got to go out to the northeastern parts of the United States where the factories are. So Ohio's right off of a Great Lake, right? So those Great Lake, that system, that chain of Great Lakes was important. So some goes, the railroads take some of it, and the big ships take some of it out to those factories. So Lake Superior specifically is a very important natural resource in the iron industry. Machines, lots of machines were used. They listed a ton. Right? We know that they needed railroads, because we know Rockefeller was really big with the railroads and helping transport. They have to go from the Mesabi Range to Lake Superior. They go from the Mesabi Range, some goes on the trains down here to the cities and out and over to these big factories. I know in Coon Rapids we have 2 different railroad tracks that are used. One of them we constantly see the trains coming from the Iron Range, and it's carrying big things of iron ore even to this day. That's how huge the Iron Range is in Minnesota. Over 100 years ago, they were finding the iron ore there. The Merritt brothers discovered the Mesabi Range. It's still being used today, right? The earth isn't producing more iron ore. That's how big this range is. It's still there from hundreds of years ago. It's still there. So it's a huge, huge, huge range. Think about all those other machines that they talked about. You have to have 3 listed, but you can list more. It's only going to help you studying for the test if you list multiples. You do have to have 2 natural resources listed. Now let's look at the people. We can already fill in names of people, right? So it's not just the jobs that are important. What names can we have filled in already? Eleanor, give me one.
Henry Oliver.
Henry Oliver. He's the big iron ore industrialist. Who goes along with Henry Oliver? Addie?
John D.
Rockefeller, and who else can we put in with Robbie?
Andrew.
Andrew Carnegie. Those are 3 big guys that had a role in the iron industry. Who else could we put there? Harper? The Merritt brothers. They discovered the Mesabi Range. Right, so those are actual names of people that we can put in there. Now we have the people doing the jobs, and let's learn about what kind of jobs they did.
People. Minnesota's iron mining industry depended heavily on the investments of Minnesotans such as the Merritt brothers and of out-of-state industrialists such as Henry Oliver. But it needed more than money. It also needed the labor of thousands of people, most of them recent immigrants. These workers put their lives at risk to make a living working in the dangerous open pit and underground mines on the Mesabi, Vermilion, and Cuyuna ranges. The mining company that bore Henry Oliver's name grew in the years after he made his agreement with John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie. In 1901, it became part of a much larger company called U.S. Steel. Still, the mining business in Minnesota continued to operate under the Oliver name for more than 50 years.
So in the flour industry and in the lumber industry, we learn about the flour mill and the sawmill because they're actually located here in Minnesota, right? So we learned about the machines being used in those mills. Are the iron factories here in Minnesota?
No.
No, they were out of state, the northeastern states, like I said, Ohio I know is a big one. So we're not learning about the iron factories that are producing the steel, we're just learning about what was focused on here in Minnesota, so we're learning about the iron range and the machines that were used in the iron range. Who worked in the iron range? A lot of immigrants.
Please excuse this interruption. These are your Wednesday afternoon announcements. Reminder, if you have sold any tuition raffle tickets, please turn those into the office. Also, Friday is the last day to turn in pop tabs, so if you are collecting those, make sure you bring them in before Friday or on Friday. Also, today's after-school lessons are tennis, so if you are part of the tennis lessons, please meet outside of the gym. Your instructors will meet you there. If you are an after-school care, make sure you check in with after-school care staff before you go to tennis. That is all I have for you today. Remember to be kind, be brave, believe, be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go, and have a fantastic Wednesday evening. See you tomorrow.
So, side note, I did hear some people saying, oh, we have so many pop tabs, I might just save mine for next year. One, we don't know if we're gonna do this again next year. Right, every year we decide what we're gonna do. Last year was the first year we did it. So we don't know if it's gonna happen next year or not. Save your pop tabs over the year just in case. I think that's what Alyssa's family did, right? You guys have been saving all year. Hey, let's just collect those pop tabs. I have heard some other teachers talking about, oh, somebody brought in a big bunch of them, just like we have big bunches. I don't know what the other classrooms have. So I highly recommend, if you have pop tabs at home, bring them in, because we want to win. I get a little competitive. We want to win. Bring them in. Okay, so back to the iron range. I think it was Adeline said the people working there were immigrants, people coming in from other countries. Typically, did the immigrants have a high human capital? Did they have lots of skills? Amala's shaking her head no. Okay, they didn't have those high skills. Working in the flour mill, you needed to know how to operate those new machines. Working in the sawmills, you needed to know how to be a lumberjack, how to operate those machines in the mills, because it was dangerous. Working in the iron range, those grains of iron ore are just laying on top of the ground. You're shoveling them up. Do you need a lot of skill? No, right? You're just shoveling up all that grain. You don't need a lot of skill. But it was a dangerous job. Miners were paid low wages for dangerous work in the mines. What's dangerous? I'm shoveling. I don't have to worry about my hand getting cut off. What's dangerous about the iron mines, James?
Those tunnels could collapse.
Yeah, the tunnels could collapse. There were underground tunnels. They can collapse. They might not collapse on you, but if your way out collapses, you're trapped. And they can't get to you in time before you run out of air.
Nope.
Yeah. So it was dangerous. If you're in the open pit, like Masabi's an open pit, and you're shoveling, think of how deep down they are shoveling down to. The sides can be like an avalanche. Instead of snow, it's an avalanche of the ground coming down, and you could get buried. So it's dangerous, but they don't have a high human capital. They don't have a lot of skill. They can't get a job elsewhere because they don't have that high human capital. So the iron industry saying, well, we're gonna pay this much because you don't have a lot of skill. They're gonna say, but it's dangerous, and they're gonna say, well, there's more immigrants coming. And the immigrants coming in are gonna say, we need money. Some money is better than no money. So they're gonna take the dangerous job at a low pay, because that's all they can get, and they need money to pay for their bills. Harper?
What about breathing in the molecules from
Yeah, breathing it in, yes, that would be dangerous also. Okay, breathing in all of that dust, okay, that's not gonna be good for your lungs. You are correct. James?
If I could pick like a job, it would probably be a lumberjack because you can get some good money out of it.
We could also, die.
Yeah, but
Adelaide?
I'm gonna be careful.
Like these little train things that are there. Do you think you could get run over by it?
I think maybe, I mean, anything's possible, but I think it's more of a chance that it would collapse, the tunnel would collapse, and that would be more of the danger. I don't think these little trains inside the mines went that fast.
More like get in.
So I think they could probably stop if somebody fell in front of it. I don't know. I don't know 100%. I think it would be more dangerous to worry about collapse.
Up at my cabin,
Yeah.
there's like this place we go to, and it was like an old iron mine, and there's like a huge lake that, and it's basically just full of water, but it's like a hole and it's from.
It's a big pit that filled up with the
And
water.
then-
Yep.
And there's like some old machines there, and
Sure.
you can like take a tour, and there's like this old elevator thing that you can take, and it's really scary.
Yeah, those elevator shafts go deep into the ground. That would be scary. Okay, one last section. Oops, wrong button. This one.
The flour milling, lumber, and iron mining industries continued to drive Minnesota's economy well into the 1900s. Abundant natural resources, technological innovations, hardworking people, and money to invest were all essentials for creating a thriving business economy in Minnesota.
Okay, now we have pictures of artificial limbs. Because we heard about with the flour industry and the lumberjack industry, people lost their arms and legs easily in machines, right? So we have artificial legs start to become a bigger deal because more people need them. I don't think this is in your book, guys. Look up here. So more people need them. Thank you, Lexi. Thank you, Eleanor. So it becomes a bigger thing. Now, it's not just from machine accidents that people lose an arm or a leg. They might have lost one in war. They might have lost one because of a disease. Okay, they were born without an arm or a leg. Okay, there's lots of reasons why people need artificial limbs, and they start to become more. Think back to the pirate days, and you hear about somebody having a peg leg, and it's just a wooden stick that they're walking on. It's not that easy to walk with that. So they start making them with joints. So it bends. It acts more like a real limb. So you can see a hand that actually holds a pencil. Here he is actually writing with it. This was the owner of the company who has an artificial limb himself. And he made sure to put pictures of himself on his letterhead so people could see, hey, the person who owns the company uses his own product. He's going to make a good product that's functional. That tape measures, measuring was really important, and how you measure to make sure it's the right size. You don't want one leg longer than the other. Okay, it's not going to be very functional then. Here's two railroad workers that had artificial legs, and it says in the ad, it said they were considered two of the best workers at the railroad. So they're showing that just because you lose an arm or a leg in an accident for whatever reason, you can still be one of the best employees. Here's a picture showing them doing all the things that regular people do with the artificial limbs. So it's just, we learned, right? They were learning to put safety measures in place. They're learning how to work with all of their stuff. At this point, your entire comprehension page should be finished. If it is not, you're going to want to bring your book home to finish it. We will not have class time. Oh, I'm talking. Shh. We will not have class time to work on finishing up comprehension pages. So you need to make sure that it is finished. If you are watching this at home, I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.